The mysteries of what happened at the Reverie have been building up since the start of Wano. And now that Wano is over, we are finally getting some answers and clues on what happened to some major characters like Sabo and Vivi. So in this video, we're gonna be cracking the case on what actually happened at the Reverie. But before we get to that, I just need you to do me one favor, which is to hit that subscribe button and join the King Pirates crew because it really helps the channel and I would really appreciate it. With that said though, let's get into this investigation and we're gonna be looking at all the information and clues that we've gotten to really solve this case. And because this is a proper mystery, we're gonna have to dress for the occasion. Now we're ready. And we start the investigation in the aftermath of Whole Cake Island when Luffy was being announced as the 5th Emperor. And as news spread across the world about Luffy, one person reacting to this was Sabo. And not only was he incredibly excited for Luffy, but he had his own mission that he was setting out to, which was declaring war on the world government. Meanwhile, as the other revolutionary officers start to gather, they are already starting to incite revolutions in different kingdoms that are being attacked by pirates because their kings have left for the Reverie. But back in Marijua, as the Reverie is set to begin, kings and queens from across the world arrive at the Red Port, and amongst them is Sabo and the other revolutionary officers that have infiltrated the Reverie. On the marine side of things, we find out that Fujitora wants to abolish the warlord system with the help of King Riku and Cobra, and also that Vegapunk has come up with the SSG to help replace the warlords. Akainu also gets word about Big Mom and Kaido making contact, but chooses to ignore it because of Wano's unknown force. Back at Marijua though, we have a meeting of a bunch of familiar faces. Shirahoshi, Rebecca, Vivi, Leo, Donsai, Dr. Kureha, and Dalton all meet up as the Luffy fan club, but you also see some not so great people there like Walpole and Stelly, and also some familiar celestial dragons like Saint Charlos, which leads us to our first conflict. Because the human gummy bear known as Saint Charlos has his eyes set on Shirahoshi and tries to capture her, and right before King Neptune decides to take action and risk everything, Saint Miasgard actually saves the day. For those of you that don't remember, he was the person that was saved by Queen Otohime back in Fishman Island, so he ends up saving the day here and also ensures that he's gonna protect Shirahoshi and her friends. In the midst of all that, another person arrives to the party, and that is Jewelry Bonnie, disguised as the Queen Dowager of the Sorbet Kingdom. She ends up sneaking into the residential area of the Celestial Dragons, and her mission is to save Kuma. And coincidentally, right below her underground are the revolutionary officers, and they have a similar idea and set out on a do-or-die mission to save Kuma as well. And with all that said, the Reverie finally begins, but the world government have also been making their own moves. Because while all of this is going down, we end up meeting the true king slash queen of the world government, Imu, who first is staring at a giant straw hat. While they're doing that, a red-haired man shows up to the Gorosei and warns them about a certain pirate. God damn, I forgot about how hyped the Reverie arc was. But following that, we find out from the Gorosei that Cobra wanted to meet them, which we already knew because he had said that he wanted to learn more about the poneglyphs. And let's just say that was not Cobra's brightest idea. As the Reverie arc concludes, the Gorosei mentioned the start of a great cleansing and the erasing of another light, and we finally properly meet Imu, who has shredded up pictures of Blackbeard, Shirahoshi, and Luffy with only Vivi's picture remaining in their hand. And that right there marks the end of the Reverie arc and everything leading up to the actual Reverie. So let's get into some of the clues that we found out, because the next update we get is from Blackbeard, and he ends up telling us that the Revolutionary Army ended up clashing with Green Bull and Fujitora in their attempt to save Kuma. And the important thing to note here is that this happened on the 4th day of the Reverie, while the Reverie is a 7-day event. Following that though, we end up getting some more hints in the aftermath of the Reverie when it concluded. We actually start with Garp and Shirahoshi, who have returned to Fishman Island, and the important thing to note here is that Shirahoshi seems completely fine and knows absolutely nothing. In fact, it's actually Garp that tells them that after the Reverie was over and they left, something happened regarding the kingdom of Alabasta. And when something big happens, there is only one man capable of spreading the word, and that of course is Big News is absolutely gassed about printing these headlines. He even gets sent a check to cover up the stories by the world government and even gets attacked by them, but as the pure journalist that he is, he does not cater to them. Instead, he ends up printing 3 major headlines: the warlord system getting abolished, a fatality at the Reverie, along with an attempted assassination. And while all of this news is spreading, he also gets a call from Walpole, who wants to leak some information. But with the papers printed, word starts to spread across the world, and we see see a bunch of reactions. We first see the revolutionaries who are starting to panic. Ivankov can't believe the news about Sabo. Dragon wants to get after the truth first, and Koala even starts to tear up and says please don't be true. Back in the Goa Kingdom, Makino closes her bar while also worrying about Sabo, while Dadan and the other bandits burst into tears saying that they had just only found out that Sabo was alive and were hoping the news is also not real. As for the warlord system getting abolished, the Marines immediately started to take action and go after them, and because of that, despite Big Mom and Kaido teaming up in Wano, Akainu decides once again not to interfere. And that right there wraps up all the hints and clues that we've gotten up until the recent chapter, so let's get into some of the recent confirmations. Because we got some big answers in this last chapter, starting off with Sabo becoming a Flame Emperor. Sabo is pretty much at the center of all the news because not only did he accomplish his mission of declaring war on the world government by destroying a divine statue, but also him and the other revolutionary officers were able to successfully rescue Kuma and escape. And on top of that, it's being reported that he was also responsible for the assassination of King Cobra. And as a result of all of this, he's lit flames of rebellion across the world and has become a revolutionary icon that's even more influential than Dragon, especially with the recent news that his brother Luffy became a Yonko and took down Big Mom and Kaido. So out of everybody involved, Sabo is definitely the center of attention right now, making all the waves. Besides that though, we also found out that Vivi has completely disappeared despite the Alabasta ship not even leaving the Red Port yet after all this time. And the final bit of information that we get is that the attempted assassination was actually on the human gummy bear Saint Charlos. And what's even more interesting is that the Marines are leaving it alone because Saint Mjolsgar excused the criminals. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all the information that we've gotten so far in the story, so let's get to detecting. And the first thing I want to do with this case is just throw some things off to the side that I'm just not going to talk about. For example, the Shanks and Gorosei stuff, I could do an entire video just talking about that, but all in all, I don't think he's evil. If you want my thoughts on that, you could check this video out. But besides that, we also have the Warlord and SSG stuff and how Buggy became a Yonko. I'll probably save that for a future video. So instead, in this investigation, we're going to be focusing on three things, which is Sabo, Vivi, and Charlos. And we'll start off with Sabo because he's the guy we have the most information on, and based off of everything we just learned, most of it makes sense. Because initially, he went to the Reverie with two missions in mind, which is to declare war and rescue Kuma, and he succeeded in both of them. That in itself is a huge feat, to sneak into the Reverie in the Holy Land, declare war, fight two admirals, and rescue Kuma. Of course, that's going to be very inspirational and spark flames of rebellion. So most of Sabo's actions and him becoming the Flame Emperor make sense, but there are still two remaining mysteries, which is why did he reportedly kill Cobra, and what was with the reactions that we saw regarding his news. We'll start off with Cobra because I think this one is actually pretty simple. I think Sabo was clearly framed. It just makes no sense for Sabo to kill Cobra. Even the revolutionaries have said themselves that their enemy is not the world government, it's instead the celestial dragons. And while Alabasta was one of the original 20 kingdoms that made up the world government, there's still no reason for Sabo to attack Cobra now that Alabasta has left. Furthermore, the timeline of everything doesn't really add up, because in the recent chapter, the scans insinuate Sabo kills Cobra just a few hours after rescuing Kuma. And that just really doesn't make any sense at all. Like, how does he do that and why would he do that? So the timeline of everything there just don't add up unless like the official changes it. In that case, just ignore everything I just said. In the end, with this mystery, I think there's a pretty easy answer here. Sabo went in there, had a big W, rescued Kuma, declared war, and the world government didn't want him to just walk away with a W, so instead they framed him for killing Cobra. But in reality, when Cobra went to talk to them, they probably just sniped him for knowing too much information. And then as far as them still trying to cover up the news, I think they were specifically trying to omit the information about Sabo declaring war and rescuing Kuma, and because they failed to cover up that news, now Sabo is revered as an icon and a bunch of rebellions are happening. So overall, that explanation makes perfect sense to me, but what still doesn't quite add up is the reactions from other people. Because while Ivankov and Dragon's reactions make sense because they want to find out more information, and it doesn't make sense that Sabo killed Cobra, Koala, Makino, and Dadan's reactions still don't make sense because they are literally bursting into tears worrying about Sabo and what happened to him. And there's just really no reason to act that way if all he did was kill someone else. I've seen some people mention the idea that they're worried about him because maybe he's like the most wanted man now, but he was already the second in command of the Revolutionary Army. I feel like that reaction is still a bit of a stretch. So honestly, I think the answer to this mystery is that either Oda just exaggerated those reactions to get us more intrigued, or there's still some details missing, like Sabo didn't walk away without any consequences. For example, maybe he succeeded in everything but walked away in critical condition, and that I think could explain everything. It would make him an icon of revolution even more because he would kind of be like a martyr, and also the reactions would make sense because he actually got got hurt. But with that said, let's move on to the next mystery, and that is Vivi. And with her, we have much less information on because all we really know is that she just disappeared. And in regards to Vivi, I've seen most people so far speculate that she's with Sabo, which is entirely possible, but I actually don't think that's the case. Because just going off the fact that Sabo declared war on the world government and rescued Kuma, he has no reason to stick around. He should just leave. Add in the fact that he might also be seriously injured, there's even more reason for him not to stick around. As far as his connection with Cobra goes, as we mentioned, it could be completely fabricated, but what could be the biggest hint here is actually the timeline. Because as we know, Sabo rescued Kuma on the 4th day and seemingly killed Cobra immediately afterwards. But going off of what Garp had said, an incident regarding the kingdom of Alabasta happened right after they left. So if Cobra ended up dying on the 4th day, it wouldn't really make sense for it to be him. And even if it was about him, I would assume that Vivi disappearing also happened on the last day. So as far as what happened to Vivi, my best guess is actually she ended up going with Don Sai. Because remember, Sai had gone to the Reverie as a prince of his kingdom, so he could have easily just snuck Vivi with him and just left on the last day. On top of that, as a member of the Grand Fleet, he has a Viva card to Luffy, creating a path for Vivi to reunite with the Straw Hats, which was always something that had to happen eventually based off the last interaction that they had, where she specifically asked them that if one day she was going to return, would they still accept her as a crew member, and they all threw their fists up in the air and said yes. So as far as the future of Vivi's story, going with Don Sai also makes sense. And on top of that, with everything that just happened, she can't go back to Alabasta now because not only is it dangerous with Cobra dead, but also it's important to remember that Wapol had leaked some information to Big News Morgans, and the only bit of relevant information that he could have is that on Drum Island, he saw Vivi traveling with the Straw Hats, who are now a Yonko crew. So with that bit of information leaked, Vivi is probably being treated as a wanted pirate, so the only place she could go is back to the Straw Hats. So I think the most likely option of what happened is that she ended up escaping with Sai, she's gonna reunite with Luffy and the Straw Hats, and then she's able to just explain everything and tell them what happened. With that being said though, let's get to our final mystery with the human gummy bear, and this one is definitely the hardest because we have so little information. The only person I could really think of is Jewelry Bonnie, because at this point she's one of the last people that was at the Reverie that we have no information on. Obviously she went there to rescue Kuma, and at that point Kuma was the slave of Charlos's dad, so maybe in the midst of trying to rescue Kuma, she tried to kill Charlos or like use him as a hostage, and that could have been the point the revolutionaries came in and took advantage and rescued Kuma. And then in the aftermath of all that, Meowscar just helped out Bonnie because he's a good guy and also doesn't like slaves. That's the only explanation I could think of, and that right there is the conclusion of my investigation on this Reverie case. And usually at this point I would ask for a like, but I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments, because at the end of the day I'm sure one of you could actually figure out the right answer, so I hand the detective glasses off to you. And also, let's just play a quick game of rock, paper, scissors. If you lose, you have to like, subscribe, and watch the next video. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot!